Jim and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos, the original 4-H's of podcasting, we review movies either current or classic on this show. We took a little bit of a break last week. Big election here in the U.S. Ugh, don't even want to talk about it. But we're back in the saddle this week, and we are excited to talk with you, not about one movie, but two movies. We're going to be giving you a short review of Anora, as well as a more extended review of Heretic, starring Hugh Grant. A lot to talk about tonight, but before we get into that, let me introduce you to two of my favorite people on the whole frickin' planet. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hi, sweetheart.
Hello, I'm here. Really excited to talk about a couple of movies with you guys. I think it's been a while since we did. Well, it's been a few shows since we did like a double feature. So these are two new movies that are out there, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think of them.
Sometimes we just gotta double fist it, right?
Yeah, we do.
Hey there.
Just but plug it up afterward, right? So anyway, you heard from him just a second ago, but the redoubtable William Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will. How are you doing?
Hey, doing all right. Glad to be here, especially talking about these two films. These are two films that I watched at Fantastic Fest, and I think that I've maybe mentioned them in brief, both of them at some point in the last couple of weeks on this podcast, but I haven't really had a chance to talk about them with y'all. And so I am really excited to do that thing that we do where we throw them down on the table, rip them apart, and really see how these things tick. Two real fun ones on the docket for today. Let's do this MBP style.
All right, excellent. Well, there is a lot to talk about with these films. Jim, Will, are we ready to just dive into our first discussion?
Yeah, let's DP this one. Double podcast, that is.
Double podcast. Oh, I like that.
I believe we should.
All right. Well, we're going to get things kicked off with a short review of Anora. And I say it's a short review because unlike our main movie discussion where we do like a non-spoiler section and then a spoiler section, this one is just going to be purely non-spoilery. So if you haven't seen Anora yet, that's totally cool. Hang out with us. We'll give you our brief thoughts and impressions on this one, whether we think it's worth watching, worth checking out. But as always, make up your own mind, right? You should check it out, see what you think. But if you like hearing what we think, we're happy to ramble on. So all that said, here we go. Our non-spoilery discussion of Anora. All right, Jim, give us the brief setup of this one and tell us a little bit about what you thought. Non-spoilery, of course. Is this one worth checking out? Waiting for streaming? Skipping? Where'd you come down?
Yeah, so this one is Anora. It's the new film by writer-director Sean Baker, who gave us the Florida Project. Before that was gave us Red Rocket. Before that was Florida Project. Before that was Tangerine. And I'm trying to remember what else, but we'll probably get to that. And this was a new one. He's one of my favorite, I would say, youngish directors that are out there working. I just like what he does, and we'll get into why and whether this movie, continued that string. Florida Project is one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years or so. So I was really, really excited to see this. I was really super jelly when Will got to see it at Fantastic Fest. It was the Cannes Palme d'Or winner. So that's pretty special when they get a film like that. So let me read the the synopsis of the film, and we'll get into, who stars in it. But it's about Anora, a young sex worker from Brooklyn who meets and impulsively marries the son of a Russian oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as his parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled. And so that's kind of the narrative thrust of this film. This one stars Mikey Madison as Anora in the title role. There's some awesome performances in here. Some of that I didn't even expect. I didn't really know Mikey Madison. She'd been around. And we could talk about maybe some of the stuff that she's been in. But I also wanted to talk about, some of the other folks that were in this. There's a character in this called Igor. Is it Igor or Igor? Do you remember?
I think it's Igor, but
It's Igor.
Yeah.
They pronounce it Eager.
Eager.
Like eager beaver.
Eager. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird pronunciation. Just a cool character. I think that's what gets me about these films. I really love this film. I don't know if it's as strong as Florida Project for me. Neither was Red Rocket really, but I did really like it. And I think what it is about, first of all, I want to say that Sean Baker does for sex workers what Martin Scorsese does for gangsters. You know what I mean? Like I think almost every film or every notable film that Sean Baker's made has starred or had a sex worker at the heart of its story, which is really kind of interesting, I think. Yeah, so this one, I think what I like about it is the character work that he does, the way he writes his dialogue, the way the characters interact, the way you get to feel something about the characters, whether you hate them or you just like you find them super interesting, and they all have a little bit something that makes them kind of special and jump off the screen. And the character interactions feel so, I don't know, like alive in a way. It's really incredible, and I really liked Nora a lot. So I'm going to let you guys talk about it a little.
All right. Thanks for setting that one up, Jim, and giving us some preliminary thoughts. Will, how about for you?
Yeah, I love this movie. This is one of those films that I think where it works best about it is that Sean Baker has this uncanny ability to really make his cinematic films feel very grounded and real without necessarily feeling like falsely gritty. Like there's sometimes realism is sometimes conflated with like making things like ugly or harsh, and not to say that he shies away from things that are ugly and harsh, but he also seems to find beauty in those things too. Here he takes the character of Ani, Mikey Madison's character, who by the way will likely be nominated for best actress in a feature film for this, and deservedly so. This is one of the best performances I've seen this year. She just
as long as Demi Moore gets one too.
There's a world where it happens for the substance. Yeah. So but yeah, so what this character here is as a lead character is in some ways not someone that we would normally find likable as a protagonist. She is brash. She is she has these like rose tinted glasses on about certain things. She also is unwilling to really like compromise on other things, and yet we root for her because the parts of her that are sincere, the amount of like how much affection she puts onto someone, the amount of tenacity she has in chasing that, and the amount of tenacity she has in sort of stepping up for herself. These are things that we value and that we love. I loved this character so much. And I love all of these characters so much because they do feel so real in so many ways. The likable parts and the unlikable parts. The story itself, I think it's been described this way a few times, but I'll say it again. It's very much Pretty Woman with a coat of uncut gems on top of it. You have that story of kind of like a woman who finds love and potentially even like an escape, but also through the lens of this very anxiety-inducing night that she has to embark on, which is one of the main thrusts here. While this may not be my favorite Sean Baker film, I think that's still going to be, and I think it'll be hard to dethrone Tangerine from that role. That is just such a perfectly special little film. I think this is his best film in that I think this is the film that best kind of forward to backwards encapsulates exactly what he's trying to tell with all parts, story, character, shot composition, mood, tone, all of those things married in such a way that it comes out in this perfect blend. Anora's the goods. It's the goods. When I was at Fantastic Fest, everyone always says, what are your favorite films? What are the things that you like best? And no matter who I spoke with, Anora was like, it was almost like the answer that you had to get out of the way before you could have the other answers, right? It's like, well, of course, Anora, but also blah, blah, blah. It was that universally loved, which doesn't always happen with any film, let alone like a studio film. So this one has resonance. This one has just cinematic magic. Go see Anora. It's special. It's very special.
All right. Well, thank you so much for weighing in as well. I mean, as well. But I mean, you're also Will. So as well.
Will.
For me, I think I had a little bit of a different experience with this movie. And I hate to break up the universal love, but I guess I'm going to. I actually found the Annie character really bratty and annoying, and I didn't really feel for her a lot in the situation she was putting herself in and that she was going through. There are a couple times, where things are happening where we're talking non-spoilery, where she just makes all the wrong choices. And yes, like, she's a human. Humans are going to do that. But there are times when like the right choices are like staring her right in the face, and she chooses to double down on being like bratty and bitchy and making things worse. And it just left me scratching my head at several points. Like, why would you do this? I do think that probably the first like 2/3 of the movie, I was pretty with it. As like sort of the relationship is developing and as we start to get into like the stakes of what's going on. But then there's this whole sequence that just goes on way too fucking long. It could have been shortened by 25 minutes at least and still accomplish the same thing. And I just kind of felt like, Jesus Christ, like, is this part of this movie like ever going to end? And like, can we get to a resolution of things? So I think it's fine. It didn't really, I don't know, do a ton for me. It did make me miss winter. There were some cool winter scenes in this film. Having been to Brooklyn before, it also makes me want to go back to New York, babe, if that's ever a trip we want to make together.
Let's go to the HQ.
Let's do it. Fun story. I've never been to a strip club ever in my whole life. Not even a male one.
Hey.
So, maybe that'll be the time to break my
This one
cherry.
gave you a good idea what happens inside of a strip club, did it not?
Well,
I think it was very accurate.
It raised more questions. Well, see, I don't know because I've never been to one. Like, I don't know. Like, does full-on sex happen in these things? Is it just, girls like bouncing their titties in your face the whole time? Is it a combination of the two? I have no idea. But it is interesting to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit. I mean, we've seen lots of movies about like strippers and dancers, showgirls. Yeah. I'm looking at you, right? But it was interesting to kind of blend a little like Pretty Woman love question mark into it. But by and large, I don't think this is one that I really am going to remember much a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. But I am glad to see so many people are enjoying it to the level that they do. Film is just subjective, and it's not going to hit for everybody. So,
You know, you hit on
Yeah.
something that I think is also worth noting. You mentioned the Brooklyn aspect of this, right? Just like how much this film is not just a love letter, but also like a tour guide to kind of a very specific part of New York, right? And I think that's another theme of his films, because if you think of Red Rocket, it was like that with like small town Texas, and the Florida Project, obviously, sort of like in the Orlando area,
strip mall
outside
area,
of
yeah.
outside of the main strip of Disney.
I mean, we were just in Fort Lauderdale for Cannonball, and we remarked driving around the first day. We're like, this is the fucking Florida Project right here. That's what this is. You know.
Oh yeah.
So.
And Tangerine is set in a very specific part of kind of like the Hollywood area, where it's just, you know, a couple of city blocks, and you learn that area very well. So I feel like what I love about him as a filmmaker, and I think honestly, I don't know if I really understood this about my appreciation for him as a filmmaker until you mentioned the thing about Brooklyn just now, Brad. So I appreciate this a lot. Is that this is the type of guy who's able to create a love letter to a place without it necessarily being the same place over and over. Like, it's not like Stephen King and like Maryland, right? You know, or Maine. Sorry, not Maryland, Maine. Or it's not like, you know, Scorsese and like, you know, certain kind of urban aspect. You know, he finds an area, Sean Baker finds an area, and he tells a story about that area, and he makes that area an integral part of that story. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think, Will, and this is to get to what Brad was talking about, after like the first half to 2/3 of the movie, it did also, some of the choices in the direction that the film goes did kind of wear me down a little bit too. There's I think you know what we're talking about. Let's just call it a chase, right? And it seems to go to place to place to place to place to place to place, and you're with the kind of the same small group of characters. They're kind of riffing on each other and stuff, and that's kind of cool. There's some cool moments in there, but I did feel like it was a bit indulgent by Baker. Maybe he felt like, it almost felt like he's playing in a new sandbox. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I've seen a sequence like that in his other films necessarily, but like it almost felt like he's playing in a new sandbox, and he just spent a little bit too much time there and kind of overplayed it a little bit. So I wish that could have been cut back a little bit, because I loved the first half of this film. I mean, when things start going down, let's just say when things start going bad, let's just say at the mansion, man, I haven't seen a lot of action filmed that way before. It felt really visceral. Like, you could feel the danger, and you're on the edge of your seat. You don't know what's going to happen for Anora or for any of the other characters. And I thought that was really well done. But like I said, when they got into the let's just call it the chase sequence, which is not really a chase, but we'll just a pursuit, I guess, or a treasure hunt, if I guess we call it that. It was it was a little. It felt just a bit overdone. And I want to talk about that one character, Igor. I don't know who played it. I think it's a Russian actor. But man, from the early on, the movie is telling you something about this character from pretty early on in the film, that you think he's maybe one thing, and you know, you're not sure what to think about this character, and I'm not going to spoil anything about how the movie ends or anything like that, but I think it was wonderful how that character was handled in the film. I will say there's always a thread of empathy and humanity in his films, Sean Baker, and it kind of centered around this character for me, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, the eager character definitely, I think, was kind of the highlight for me in all of this. It's that common throughput thread of just like fucking human decency, even in these crazy fucked up things that are happening. It was nice and it was grounding, and I appreciated that a lot. Even if there were some questionable things happening, and we're not
Yeah.
going into spoilers, so we can't
No,
get into
no.
all of that. But I did very much appreciate the presence, I guess, that the character and the actor brought towards
Oh
it.
yeah. This is an actor who this is an actor and a character who are perfectly married together to do the thing that I love about Baker's films, which is that extra blush of humanity and the chemistry that he has both with he has like sort of like another guy that he kind of has to riff off of for a bit. I think there's good chemistry there, and then there's good chemistry with the interactions that he has with the Mikey Madison character as well. And I think all of that is intentional. It's so intentional. Like you get the right people in the right spots with the right script, with the right director, and the right motivation, and you get the right film. So yeah, this one, like I said, this one's special for me. We'll be talking about this one again here in a couple of months. Just not to tip my hand, but it's dethroned like 140 something movies this year.
Wow.
It's not my number one, but it is.
When we get to that point in March or whatever it is,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
February.
but it's pushed a bunch of things off the list.
Jim, I wanted to ask you in particular, was there enough smoking in this movie for you?
There was enough smoking, and of course, because it's a modern movie, there was enough vaping in the movie too. I mean, you got to have the vaping as well. There's plenty of smoking. Yeah.
If you're new to this show, Jim likes what we call the French smoking movies, where it's like the whole thing takes place in like a haze of cigarette smoke as people are dramatically like dangling their cigarettes. And
smoking is still very much a tool that is used by filmmakers to build a sense of atmosphere, right? And I don't mean that in the physical sense. I mean that kind of in the the feeling sense. Like you feel the atmosphere here with these characters. And yeah, this is definitely an R-rated movie, by the way, too. There's a lot going on in this film that makes it an R-rated movie. Well, I mean, it does happen in a strip club, so you see some people partially naked.
Yeah,
movies.
If that's not something that you want to see, then this one's not for you.
Yeah.
All right.
But as gay men, we probably wish it had been a little bit more equal in terms of the nudity, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think you make a point there. Although I will say that the main like male character in this, we saw a lot of him naked. I mean, I don't think we saw like balls or dick or
No.
bush. I think we saw his...
You see a glimpse.
You see a glimpse of dick.
Yeah,
when
maybe
he flips over. He flips over
Yeah.
one time, yeah. But it's definitely, there's a lot of male gaze in this movie. Let's just say that.
For sure. Well, I think maybe that ties a little bow on our Anora discussion.
Yeah.
Two big recommends for this movie. Definitely check it out. Form your own opinion. See what you think. And stay tuned for our top 10 of 2024. It sounds like this one may be coming back to be part of that conversation. Jim will give us a drum roll. Are you ready for our main movie discussion of the week? Okay, that's
Let it
enough.
roll.
That was probably audio hell.
We'll see how that works in the editing, babe.
Yeah.
But you guys good to make the jump over to our next film?
I choose to believe.
Yes. I can't believe we're already done with one movie.
Oh, I know, right? It's almost heretical.
I'm in disbelief.
Boy. Okay, we're really down in the basement now. Okay, so we are gonna make the jump to our next film. We're going to be discussing Heretic, the new horror suspense thriller film starring Hugh Grant. We're going to be talking about this film spoiler free for about 15 minutes, and then we'll open things up full bore for spoilers. So if you haven't seen Heretic yet, feel free to hang out with us for that first 15 minutes or so. We'll give you plenty of warning before we take things into the deep, dark basement full of spoilers. But all of that said, here we go. Our discussion of Heretic. All right. Well, if you don't mind, set this one up for our listeners. What the fuck is Heretic? And what did you think? Is this worth seeing while it's in theaters, waiting for streaming, or skipping entirely? Of course, from your point of view.
Absolutely. So, Heretic is a psychological horror, psychological thriller starring Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East. The film is about these two young Mormon women who are on mission. So they're going sort of city to city, house to house, talking at people's doors, trying to talk about their religion. And they get pulled into a game of cat and mouse about their beliefs that challenges their beliefs by the Hugh Grant character, who is a charming intellectual with a very sinister set of motives. This is a great horror film. I like this episode particular because we're talking about two films that I really, really, really enjoy. So I get to just I get to vamp. I get to just talk about good stuff for me. This is a movie by the writer Scott Beck and Brian Woods, also the directors. They worked as well with John Krasinski on The Quiet Place, or A Quiet Place. And the idea behind it, as with this particular film, is they wrote a film series in the Quiet Place series that were all about horror in the absence of dialogue. Not that there's no dialogue in those films, but the horror is not based off of dialogue. It's based off of kind of the silence. And so they wanted to say, how can we create a horror film that is based on the presence of dialogue, where the dialogue is the thrust? And that's what we get here. This is a film where the tormentor, the Hugh Grant character, really torments the two young girls with a series of questions and ideas and scenarios and thought experiments that are made to challenge their faith and make them choose whether or not their faith is true, or if they would rather kind of veer towards the direction of disbelief once they are kind of presented with logic and other structures. There's a lot of philosophical stuff in this film, a lot of things that really go into kind of the way religion is or is not used by people, positively or negatively, ways that it's used as a method of control, ways that it's used as a method of solace. And as a viewer, we're left to sort of navigate through these conundrums with the two girls and kind of figure out where we lie on the question, because we're trapped right there with the girls as they descend further and further down this rabbit hole. Hugh Grant is great here. He is perfectly cast here. They needed someone who could pull off chatty and charming and pedantic, because this character does kind of go that direction, without becoming droll or without becoming boring. And I think there's a lot of people that you could put in this role that would lose that kind of sense of fun with the dialogue, and Hugh Grant doesn't. He seems to always enjoy what he's saying and how he's saying it, and I think that is such a boon. The two girls are great as well, and the characters, one of which who has some sort of already some cracks in her belief, the other one who is very firmly rooted in her belief system, I think are very well established as foils to each other. The set decoration is good. The atmosphere here is good. I love the story as it unfolds. I love the story as it reveals. I love the story as it ends, and we're left to kind of question kind of what we just saw and what we feel that it means to us. This is the type of horror that really speaks to me. I enjoy it a lot. And to answer your original question, Brad, should people go out and see this right away? I think so. This is the goods. This is one that I would, if I didn't have other things going on right now that were kind of keeping me from going to the theaters more than I'd like to, I would be rushing out to see again and again right now. So this one's the goods.
All right. Well, thank you so much for setting that up and digging in with us a little bit. Jim, how about for you? How did this one land?
Yeah, this one was a pretty solid psychological thriller. I don't know if by the end it was I think the parts were greater than the sum, kind of, for me. At the end, there was a lot of philosophical questions raised by the tormentor in this case, which it's not a spoiler to say that if you've seen the trailer, you know what's going on. He's kind of the tormentor and is kind of leading this psychological torment on these two girls, and leading them through leading questions and other things that happen in his house. Sometimes you have it does fall a little bit into the this is not really people would never do this kind of thing, or whatever. Two girls go into a guy's house in the rain. Anyway, I did like the two female leads in this film, Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East. I thought they were really very good, as well as Hugh Grant. I just don't know if in the end the movie kind of came together in a way that was super satisfying. It led to a lot of questions, and we'll get into some of those in spoilers. But I think this is fine. If you like that kind of creepy vibe, like you don't know what's going to happen next, but you kind of do know what's going to happen next, but you just don't know how it's going to play out, I think Heretic will scratch that itch for you in terms of like I said, it's definitely more psychological horror than it is like regular horror jump scare stuff. But I think you're going to find some of that in here, just not a lot. It's not a steady diet of that, which definitely don't like that. But I think this is pretty solid.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for giving us your thoughts as well. I think I'm a bit of a blend of the two of you when it comes to my thoughts here on the film. Will, I agree with you. Hugh Grant did a great job of being, like creepy and horror-y, but like also like, I don't know, like that like smart dad next door who's like trying to get you to think about things and trying to take care of you. And it's really confusing. We're not in the spoiler session yet, but it's kind of in the trailer. Like it's almost like he's looking out for these two like Mormon women and their beliefs and trying to get them to like, not just accept things at face value. And it reminds me a lot of the like religious discussions I used to have when I was in college, when my friends and I would just like sit around in a dorm room till 4 o'clock in the morning, like debating anything. And one time it happened to be religion, and it was like some deep discussion happening, whether it's over pie or Svedka vodka. Actually, we didn't even have Svedka. We had like the lowest tier shit you could get. I think it was like Stoli vodka or something. Like it was rank. It was not good vodka, but we were all of age. Everything was on the up and up. But I actually kind of enjoy discussions like that, where you start bringing in like, philosophy and asking the hard questions. And so like, as things are starting to unfold, and I was just really just held at rapt attention, I think, with the discussions that were happening. And then when the horror movie parts of the movie really kick in, I think is where it kind of I don't
Yeah.
know. It just kind of bumped down the railing for me. I was like, can we go back to like the cool philosophical stuff, you know? But I mean, I think as a movie in general, it's fine. It's fun watching Hugh Grant play kind of a creepy, menacing question mark character. Um, Jim asked the most amazing question ever, and I put it in the blurb for the show this week before we went live. We walk out of the movie, and he said, "Babe, was Hugh Grant creepier in this movie or as an Oompa Loompa in Wonka?" And I still don't know that I have an answer for that.
Yeah. I mean, pretty frightening in both. Pretty unsettling in both. Yeah.
For sure. But this is definitely one that I recommend. I came out largely positive on it overall. Especially like, you know, it's that time of year right now. We're kind of like in between some things. We're waiting for Wicked and Gladiator to come out next week. But you know, if you're looking for something this weekend to maybe go check out relative to when we're recording, I think Heretic is a pretty good choice.
Yeah, and I was positive on it too. I mean, I would recommend people see this. It would be a stronger recommend for me if the ending, if kind of the where it ended up, didn't kind of let me down a little bit, because this movie,
Mm,
you know, it got into a lot of it seemed like it wanted to explore a lot of interesting questions, and the character of Mr. Reed, who was the Hugh Grant character, seemed like he wanted to have this interaction with these people. But really, in the end, you ask yourself, really, did he, or did he want something else? So that's what I want to talk about when we get into spoilers a little bit.
yeah. Well, Will, did you have anything else you wanted to touch on before we go to spoilers?
No, actually, I think this one deserves more time in spoilers. So the sooner we get there, the better.
All
Yeah.
right.
Oh, I would just want to say that air that I breathe, the air that I breathe by the Hollies is a great song. This is another movie that takes like a great like
Mm-hmm.
60s like pop song and turns it into a creepy
Right.
song. Like, remember the movie Ouija? Ouija
I was just
did
thinking
the
about that.
exact
Yeah.
same
Did the
thing.
same
Exact
thing.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at least with this one, it's also set to the theme of the film, like not just the sound
Right.
theme, but like the metaphor of the film. We should
Mm-hmm.
talk about that in spoilers, because there is
I think
kind of
Yeah.
so.
another part of that I want to explore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
We definitely want to you know, put our thumb in that pie and dig into that a little bit. So, all right.
Mhm.
Well, we're going to go ahead and open things wide open to spoilers. Unlike other shows that instantly jump in with spoilers at this point, I'm going to ramble a little bit so that you have time. Hit the pause button if you are listening on digital tape delay. No plugs this week because Anora basically was our plug for the week. But feel free, you know, if you value your innocence about the plot of Heretic, go see it, come back, listen to the last part of this episode. If you're listening live, totally okay to bid us adieu at this point. We see a few of you hanging out with us. Hopefully, we'll see you all next time. But spoilers are happening. I'm done rambling. Jim, before we get into like the song and the
Yeah.
other song that it's kind of connected to, did you want to dig into the other thing that you were talking about first?
Well, kind of like the ending, right? At the end, I got the feeling that, okay, we get it. It's like the real religion that he's talking about is just control over people, right? And in this case, it looks like it's over women, and that's really his end game, right? All the other stuff seems like window dressing to kind of get to that point where he's just got these women in cages, and I don't know. It's uh, you know, he had them. He had them. You know, this is akin. I mean, it says it right here in the blurb, right? Cat and mouse. This is akin to a cat. It's got a mouse trapped. He's just playing with that thing until eventually he eats it, or the cat either eats it or kills it, right? And
Mm,
most of this movie is the play part of it, and when you get to the end, it's really just he just he's I don't know how many women he's killed, at least two in this movie, right? But you know, call him a serial killer or a serial torturer or whatever. yeah, it almost felt like the lead up didn't was better than kind of the end goal that he had. He's did he really like believe any of the stuff that he was espousing, or was it just like a game to to get these women to bend to his will? You know.
Wouldn't you say though that sort of ties in with in a hypocritical way, kind of with the main some of the points that he's making, kind of thus maybe even further cementing some of the points that the film is making. So like, this is a character who believes so strongly that everything is iterative, that all stories are built upon each other. And because of that, they all come from whatever your monomyth is. Now you're built into this idea of it's just become a control tool. And I need to be the one who is able to show people that they are being controlled. And it is me and I alone who can do that. And this is how I will do that. I will break down all of their defenses. I will go through all of this to show them, see that this is why I'm so smart and this is why I know these things. And so that I can save them. He's doing the same thing here that he, in many ways, correctly shows that religion does to people, right? And so it doesn't make him any better. It makes him just another person using sort of this tool of belief and disbelief for what could be altruistic ends, but it ended up being selfish ends. I find that compelling because we do have to then explore, if we're exploring the girl's belief versus disbelief, now this makes us by the end also explore kind of where his belief and disbelief lies. It adds that extra meta layer on top of it.
Yeah, he's using anti-religion to emphasize his religion of control, right? Of ultimate control. He's anti-religion. He's anti all other religions except for his religion of control.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting the way that this is set up, and I'll tell you that like the movie really held my interest until the girls went through the doors, and then they go into the basement and all the horror shit starts happening, right? The whole psychological setup and the examining religious beliefs was really kind of fascinating to me. I have a weird relationship with organized religion. I grew up Southern Baptist. I've been Episcopalian. I've gone to Presbyterian church. Like I've looked for like my, organized religion, and I guess like Episcopal would be the closest thing. But even then I don't go to church really. And as I've been looking through a lot of the different religions, even beyond Christianity, like Buddhism and some of the others, I'm like, isn't this all just iterations of the same thing? Like before I saw this movie, I'm like, like whether it's an Egyptian god or a Greek god or a Norse god or Jesus Christ, like aren't they all like figures imbued with like special abilities that like represent morality? And so for me, it's kind of like I don't know, like if you shine 3 lamps in different directions on like one object, they're all going to cast slightly different shadows, right, in their directions. But like each of the shadows is still like a reflection of the thing, right? And so it's like
same object. Yeah,
it's the same object. You're just seeing different iterations or different formations of it. So like, unless you're looking at the direct object, I mean, you're looking at an echo and you're trying to piece it together and figure out what it is. And that's what I feel like religion is, right? Whether it's a supreme divine being or it's just the fucking like energy of the universe and the role that we play in it, like, yeah, maybe there's some greater thing, but like whether you slap Christianity on it or something else, who's to say who's right and who's not, and why is it even that important, right? But it was fascinating for me to watch the Mr. Reed character start to like deconstruct these girls' beliefs and then like point out how similar they are even to things like Satanism of all things, right? And so I was just totally enraptured by that discussion. And then we go downstairs and there's the gory woman with the poison pie and this whole thing. And it kind of went off the rails there for me. But big points to putting Hugh Grant in a movie dissecting religion like that. That was pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah, there's something about, just, and the movie gets into this, about the idea that when you look at humanity as like what our greatest evolutionary traits are, there's a lot of things that you can say. Maybe it's our ability to form social units, our opposable thumbs. You hear a bunch of those different things, but there are a few different things. There are a few different other species that have those things. I think the thing that we have that is most unique to us is our ability to tell stories. And our hunger for stories. It's the way that we communicate with one another. It's the way that we pass down messages. It's the way that we teach lessons. And so it only makes sense that the stories that are the most successful are the ones that get iterated upon the most. As these stories get told over and over again, every storyteller is going to tell it a slightly different way. And so from the film's perspective, this is where religion comes from, right? These are successful stories that have been told repeatedly, but with a different lens and with that belief that's been brought back into them. If you want a story about, an immaculate birth savior who uses his special powers to save all of the followers of their religion, you could watch episode 1 of Star Wars and find that exact same story with young Anakin, right? And because it's a successful story that we've internalized, it's not just the Bible story, it appears all throughout our fiction. What I like about what this film does with this is by the end of the film, there is a world where this film is 100%. There's a world where this film could be 100% anti-religion. And I don't think that it is. There's also a world where this film immediately makes the Hugh Grant character makes all of his views, because he's the bad guy, instantly wrong. And this film doesn't do that either. This film kind of walks that area in between and really wants to explore that debate, even giving us an ending that we can interpret through logic, or maybe we have to interpret through kind of belief and through faith. And the film doesn't come out and tell us which one of those to do. We're left to sort of kind of pick which door we want to go through as the credits roll. I thought that was strong. Also strong, and I think this is a good segue over to the music side of things.
Yes, let's get to that.
So, we do have this theme that plays through here, The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, which, great song. But we find out, as explained by Hugh Grant, that same melody was used by Radiohead for Creep. And that same melody was used for a Lana Del Rey song. I, first of all, think that's great because it makes the score, or not the score, but the soundtrack, fit the theme of iteration and storytelling and mimetic repeat, really sink home. I even like that there's a sneaky one that they put in the closing credits, too. They have Sophie Thatcher, who's one of the two actresses in this film, sing a version of Knockin' on Heaven's Door, but they slow it down and they use the melody to Mazzy Star's Fade Into You. And so they create a new song based off of these two other existing songs sung by one of the actresses. As the film is closing out, Hugh Grant doesn't come out to go, oh, by the way, we're doing it again right here. They just give us an extra one there at the end. Like, if you know both of those songs, you're able to go, oh, cool. And if not, you're treated to a cool song over the credits. You're not losing anything. But I just thought that was such a great little touch. Like, it keeps the story going, which means it keeps that conversation going to the parking lot.
I got to admit, I didn't catch that at all. I'm not even sure I would know Mazzy Star's song, to be honest. But I did not catch that. I did hear her singing, at the end, but I wasn't sure how it was how it was set up. I also was a little, so in the end he talks about how it kind of intimates how a religion is a form of control over people who believe, over believers, right? But he doesn't, his form of control is not anything like that, right? It's not intellectual at all. It's purely physical. He basically drugs and puts people in cages, right? That's his control. Has nothing to do with intellectualism. So the whole movie is about the intellectual aspects of religion and how it controls, which is really very, very interesting. But his gig is just putting people in cages and calling it control. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird.
Well, he wants to break down.
It's a metaphor, but I'm not sure it's very abrupt, and I'm not sure that it really flows together.
Well, he wants to break down their defenses first, right? That's why he doesn't pick the easier of the two girls. Like the one girl already was full of disbelief. That's not his target. The one who is the deep believer. So for him, the challenge, the fun, the righteous duty, wherever you want to say it lands for him, is taking the people that are so entrenched that they're beyond salvation, so to speak. They're so entrenched in salvation that they're beyond salvation in his eyes. He wants to break them so far of that they have no doubt but to disbelief and dismantle their worldview. I think that's
the cat play part of it. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Brad,
but I mean, he had them from the very beginning. Like, I mean, once they were in that house, it was done. Like the control was there. So at that point, he's just toying with them, you know, intellectually or whatever. That stuff was still interesting, but at the end, you figure we know by the end we know. Okay, as soon as they stepped into that house, they were fucked. We kind of had that idea when they got into the house at the very beginning of the movie. We're like, oh, Jesus, here we go. There's no wife. There's no fucking blueberry cake or blueberry pie. They are totally fucked. Whatever's going to happen to them is preordained. It's going to happen.
But like brilliant setup from him, right? Like using their senses to kind of get them to fool themselves in a way, or like fall into the trap, right? Like he brings out a tray with a couple of sodas and a candle on it, and the candle's turned away from them. You can't see the label. It's a fucking blueberry pie candle. They don't know it, and they're like, the blueberry pie smells amazing. Like, it reminds me when I used to
bring out. They were already smelling it. It was left there intentionally, I think, for them to discover.
Well, I think, yeah, right. And so it's not even like an overt, like, haha, I fooled you. Like, he knew they were going to find it. He knew they were going to put it together. Right. He knew they were going to check the door. He had every move, right? Like calculated out. And that moment at the end, when the one girl realizes that she's standing where she is, having thought she made all the choices on her own, exactly because he wanted her to be there, and that he calculated out that way, I think was just brilliant. As someone who really gets off on the idea of like dominance and control, sorry for anybody listening that didn't want to hear that, but I mean, you're listening to an explicit show. We talk about all kinds of stuff here.
Right.
It's like the philosophy of control and the illusion of power. These are really fun things to play with in a setting where both people are consenting to it. Let me just be honest. And safe, you know. But to see this kind of played out in a movie like this, obviously cringy that it was not a consensual thing, but it was like, damn, Hugh Grant, like, you are a smart, dominant motherfucker. Wow.
Well, and think about what he wants them to do, right? You know, his end goal is for them to, in the most extreme way possible, dismantle their blind faith and turn to everything being sort of like logic based off of what I see before my eyes. And so that even extends to that very first scene where they come inside, you know, against their own. They both were, you know, I wouldn't count either of them as naive enough to just like normally get caught in kind of a bad situation. But I think that given the circumstance they found themselves in with the weather and with, he was charming and yeah, there is a wife inside and all of that. They chose faith in that. They're like, okay, well, this story that we're being told, I'm going to believe in this story. I'm going to put my faith in this story that's being told to me. And it took the physical evidence that they found in their real lives looking around them to dismantle that faith. So he was beginning his lesson from the moment he set that candle down. That's all intentional. It's all part of it.
Right. Am I the only one in this film who was thinking about another movie called Stand By Me when we're watching this and there's a scene of like blueberry pie being like vomited like at one point, like,
oh
it's
no,
exactly the same thing that was done in do you remember in Stand By Me when they're telling the story about the pie eating contest?
Yeah.
And there's the kid's vomiting the pie. He's got his face in the pie and he's like, it came right to mind. I'm like, oh, I wonder if the filmmakers like had some idea like, oh, we're not gonna rip off Stand By Me, but this is kind of a very oblique homage to it in a way.
Very possibly. Well, and it also sort of gets out of the, like, if you're, probably if you're making a film like this and that you want like there's a pie in the oven and it's a candle, so something like that. But also your film is very heavily tied to like metaphor. The first thing that comes to your mind is apple pie, but you don't want to use apple pie because there are certain like more like national meanings for that, as American as apple pie. So you don't want to use that. You don't want to do like a pumpkin pie or something like that because then that has seasonal things. So blueberry feels like it's one of those ones that kind of sits in that middle space, right? It's evocative, it's fragrant, but it's also doesn't have any heavy weight that's tied to like another kind of like sense memory or something like that. So it and lets it sort of live as its own here. I think that's, again, smart filmmaking. Also, I love pie and I love blueberry pie. It's one of my absolute favorite things in the world. So would I be abducted in the Hugh Grant house? Absolutely. Like, oh, come on inside. There's blueberry pie. Oops. I hopped in the stranger's van. Sorry.
Oops. Well, just hope there's no wolfsbane in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similar to how I thought of Stand By Me when I saw the scenes in this movie. Next time anybody watches Stand By Me, they probably think of this movie.
They'll think of this. Yeah.
They'll think of this one. I wonder what the rules are for these missionaries, especially female ones, right? When there's having at least two of them is smart. But I wonder what their safety rules are really for these women that like go door to door. Like, I wonder if they're even allowed to step into somebody's home at all. It seems kind of weird. That was a premise that my mind couldn't quite get over at the beginning. Like, we know it's stupid for them to set in the house because we've seen the trailer and we know bad things are ahead in this movie. But for two young women to set foot in a dude's house, it's kind of weird.
Well,
I don't know the
say
rules.
this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know their rules either, but as someone who has worked for political campaigns in the past and gone door to door for candidates, never go in the fucking house. Never. Don't do it. It's a trap. Any way you slice it, do not go in their house. Talk to them at the door.
Right.
If you don't succeed, then walk away and go. You walk into that house, you're stuck, you're fucked. Not a good situation. If their religion is like overriding common sense and sending them into people's houses for shit like this, I wonder if that religion is purposely putting people in danger for God.
And I from what I understand, and it's only from kind of light Googling and kind of what the film sets up, it's since these are missionaries, they're not just going like, they're expected to, when they get a good contact, to have like a longer conversation with someone, right? So that's why
Seems
these
like it.
conversations can shift their ways indoors, because these are conversations that could take 30 minutes to an hour of kind of talking about the word or whatever it happens to be, like that. And they're not allowed to go inside unless with someone of the opposite gender, unless someone of the same gender is present. And that was the thing that they violated here, but they knew they were violating it in this film. Like or rather, they chose to believe that they weren't violating it, if that makes the sense. They chose to believe that there was a wife. But yeah, they were, they're supposed to, they're allowed to, they just, have to have someone of their own gender present.
Apparently, there is a thing. The film, I'm reading this from Google. The film has unsurprisingly drawn the ire of the Mormon Church, which said in an official statement that the film promotes violence against women because of their faith and undermines the contributions of volunteers, that runs counter to the safety and well-being of our communities. There's probably more to that story, but that's just the tagline. But I was wondering, like, I bet the church does not like this film at all. First of all, because it basically tries to murder two of their sisters, I guess is what they're called, at least in the movie. And it kind of tears down and kind of pokes at all religions, but their religion specifically. The what is it? The magic underwear thing.
Right,
So,
magic underwear.
yeah.
That's my new safe word. So
There you go.
I knew the movie was bullshit when they said our safe word is magic underwear. I'm like, that's 2 words.
Oh boy. All right. Well, fellas, what do you say? Are we pretty well done with this one?
I am, with the caveat of Jim said something earlier that, Brad, I think you need to correct. It sounds like he hasn't heard Mazzy Star's Fade Into You, which I feel like was kind of that late 90s stretch.
Yeah.
I felt like it was on the radio like constantly.
All the time.
So, Jim, you need to get on that and listen to that after this
I will
episode.
listen. I'll probably hear it. I'll probably turn it on, listen to it, and say, "Oh, that song." Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's sort of it's a slow. It's sort of like a slow, moody piece. Like
like Creep. Yeah.
We're probably headed to Burger King when we're done recording, so we'll fire it up in the car, babe. And
okay, sounds good to me.
There you go.
He had to pee really bad, so he bolted
Whopper
out of
and
that theater.
Star,
I don't think you even heard the song. You had to pee so bad.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
All right. Well, this was great getting together to talk movies. Love talking about films with you guys. I know that we've mentioned potentially being off next week. We'll firm that up. And then, of course, we're going to be back relative to when we record late next week. Wicked and Gladiator 2 are both coming out. It's going to be a big weekend. It's going to be another big double feature show for us. And we're really excited to have a special guest joining us for those reviews, Johannes from the Movie Mistrial podcast. He's been on the show a bunch of times before. We love Johannes. We've seen him at a few events recently. He's a super awesome
pizza
guy.
with him.
We've had pizza with Johannes and his partner. And so really, really looking forward to that show for sure. So keep an eye out for that. We'll let y'all know about next week. But Jim, Will, in case folks want to connect between now and our next recording, where can they find you online? Jim, go.
Well, since I've dropped a social platform this week, one that I've been on for a while, and I'm not in the least bit sad to have dropped it, I am still on Letterboxd, though, where I rate all my movies that I see. So check me out on there at JJP Out West. You can also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thanks, babe. Will, how about you?
Make it easy. Letterboxd at The Movie Bear. Look for me on Facebook, William Lindis.
All right. And you can find me on Letterboxd as well. I feel like they should officially sponsor the show, guys. Like at this point, we talk about them all the time. Maybe we just need to tweet them and be like, hey,
Right?
maybe you can like throw us $30 a month to pay for our website hosting fees. Since
It's got to
we
be
mention
up
you all
to
the time.
100 shows by now that we've actually mentioned them. At least.
I'm sure it is, at least. Yeah. But folks, you can find me on Letterboxd at iBradPro. It's like iPad Pro, but Brad, get it? Ha, funny. And you can also find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one likely with Chub, Chaser, Bear, Otter, Wolf, Dolphin, friends in common with you. And yeah, I think that brings us to a close for this week. Thanks for hanging out with us, y'all. And we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.